So historically, why was Modulist born? Well, what we've discovered after so many years in the newspaper business, I had worked for not only small town weeklies on up to medium-sized dailies. The problems were the same across the board. Processing this community paid content historically has been cumbersome, and it results in high production costs because either you have somebody that's working at your front desk and they have to email back and forth or telephone back and forth with funeral homes or with private consumers, and that takes time. Or maybe it's somebody in your newsroom that is handling this and they get pulled off working on stories so that they can go help a funeral home, take care of a paid obit. What we do is we replace that with a self-service model so that you're no longer paying for the production of these orders. In addition, it's about saving time. Even though our business model was invented before the pandemic has made everyone realize that in our smaller newsrooms with fewer people, time is a valuable resource. And so if you could have a if you could have a self-serving platform that allows your consumers and your businesses and your funeral homes to come in and place these orders by themselves, where else could you be spending that time during the week? So finally, what we have noticed in our 5 years in existence is that if you can increase the efficiency of how a consumer submits paid content, they will often place in one or two or more publications if you have geographically close publications. Those are some of the business challenges that we like to solve. Next slide, please. This is a testimonial of a private consumer that purchased one of our obits for one of our clients through our site. And this was, believe it or not, unsolicited. And so we trumpet this every chance we get. We received an email from Lindsay and it said, "I was delighted in Modulist's simplicity. It took me less than 3 minutes to place my loved one's obituary. I would tell others that Modulist is easy to use and understand with outstanding employees if you need help." We couldn't have been prouder to get that testimonial, just simply because from our outset, Modulist has always been staffed with newspaper people who have spent time in the business, and they just care about getting it right. And so this testimonial meant a lot to us. Next slide, please. This is another testimonial from the production side. So one of our largest clients, Forum Communications, that is based in the Midwest. They have about 20 publications that are on Modulist. A lot of them are in the same upper Midwest area, and they are served by one regional production hub. And so Miss Alicia Stern-Holcraft here that you see on the slide, we reached out to her and asked her what it is, the impact that working with Modulist has on their production group. Her testimonial was, before Modulist, our process placing content like obits required multiple steps. Grabbing the design files for an obit page and laying it out could take a designer at least an hour to complete. What's not told in this slide, of course, is the magnitude of what that means to Alicia's production group. Sometimes on a given night, they're doing anywhere from 8 to 9 publications, depending on the production day. And so now you start to multiply that for their production group, and it's probably saving them, a designer shift a night, if you consider it could be 8 or 9 obit pages that they're not having to fuss with. So, next slide, please. All right. So for us, excuse me, I apologize, everyone. I was telling Jim and Karen earlier that I did some flying last week, and if you can tell, there's some sinus stuff going on. So So I apologize. So what we do, not only for our publisher partners and for the community, is that we help define content categories for readers. Oftentimes a reader will come on and they're looking to place something about some type of milestone for a loved one. Our system helps sort it out exactly what it is that they're looking to place in your publication. In addition, the system helps make certain that certain pieces of information for a story get included, right? Not all of our consumers, not all of our funeral homes, not all of our business partners small business partners out in the community are, they're not all that media savvy, right? They forget things like including first and last names and the city of residences and, a website for those businesses that are placing small business ads. And so what our team does is we're here to ensure that your clients, whether they be private consumers, funeral homes, or small businesses, are getting assistance in helping to tell their story. We also assist our community newspaper partners in helping to set a consistent pricing strategy. One of the things that we hear on a consistent basis is consumers just want to know that how things are priced when they come to your site, right? And they don't understand what 25 cents a word or $10 an inch sometimes means. And so not only does the system in its automation help the consumer understand that, but our fully staffed customer service team helps in helping to explain that to your consumers as well. We're also helping to ensure that your digital community content is updated automatically. So after orders are approved by our customer success team, we have integrated into your CMSs. And so you tell us what content that you want going back up to your website, and it's going up there in almost real time. So after our team has approved something, it's going to be then automatically uploaded to your CMSs. And so depending on the CMS that you use, you can either put a stop on that until someone comes in from your team and approves it, and then it goes live, or we can also set it up so that it just automatically goes live to your website, whatever is best for you and your community. We also try to serve our customers by creating educational and evergreen content resources. There are times that we work with our partners. April has done a number of stories to help publishers tell the community about the importance of community content and why the newspapers shouldn't give up and cede this kind of content to the social media platforms. We haven't, we haven't done a very good job in recent years of reminding the community why it is to place that wedding announcement in the newspaper, or to place your parents' retirement party announcement in the newspaper. Because while social media does a great job of telling your friends about it, who's going to tell your parents' old business partners or their confirmation teachers or their high school teachers all of these great milestones in their lives? And so that's what we do to help our partners tell that story as we develop content for you.
Hey, Devlin.
Yeah.
Hey, on that note, we have a question about, so, the different products and services that Modulist currently offers, are the components, the pieces that you're talking about, are they available a la carte? Because some of the folks that are on the call currently use other vendors, for lack of a better name, I'll bring up Legacy. So if I'm currently using Legacy, but I want to use Modulist for these other solutions that you're talking about, does that work?
Great question. And actually, that's how we designed our system. So we recognize that not every community publication has the same needs, and so we don't want that to be a barrier. We do offer the milestones as a package, right? So the weddings, the announcements, the retirements, anything that kind of falls under that milestones or the pet milestones, we offer those as a group. But yes, they are completely independent of obits and death notices. we do not have to be processing obits and death notices for you to take on any one of our other content categories. So the way our system works, of course, is we charge the end user a processing fee on each of the orders, whether that be a funeral home or a private consumer or a small business that's placing a small business ad. So we're really not out anything if we only offer up at one point. Let's say you want to turn on the paid business announcements. That's just fine. We're confident enough that over time we're going to win those other categories for you anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah, so basically just wanted to finish this slide off saying what we're really proud of is the proprietary development that has gone into Modulist. I think if you go in and look at the system and the user experience that users have, we have worked and spent many, many painstaking hours to ensure that the system reflects your brand. We don't want them to get into our system and think this is clunky, this is not serving my needs. And so we work very hard to offer a world-class online ordering platform. And so at that, I'm going to turn it over to April, who is much more of the digital expert on our team.
All right, next slide then. So now that Devlin has kind of talked about how it works and the community content problem and its opportunities, I'm just going to talk about more of the digital side. So Devin, if you could click again so we can have that on the slide. So I'm going to talk about probably our two biggest content categories, which is of course our obituaries and business announcements. We found that both of those have created discovery funnels for any news site or content site if you're a magazine or a lifestyle brand. Devin, if you want to click again too, so we can see the stats there. So right now, for example, 43% of the visitors were new and 34% of the visitors were loyal to our Inforum's business brief section. And that is the section that publishes anything that comes through Modulist that's the business brief. So an announcement about business achievement, a press release, anything like that. Devin, if you're going to click again, there's another stat on there. And then to Inforums.com's obituary section, 11% of the visitors were new and 33% were returning in the last 30 days. These stats are from chartbeat.com. So that's a more dynamic real-time measuring system. It's similar to Google Analytics though, as far as the difference between new, returning, and loyal. New visitors have visited your site in the last 30 days, returning have visited the site at least 8 times in the last, I think last 14 days. And then loyal is based on the amount of times they visited your site in the last 30 days and the amount of time that they spent on your site. So you're always kind of gauging to get loyal. And it'll be, the stats will differ depending on which analytic tool you'll use, but that's just a quick definition if you're not familiar with it. We can go to the next slide, please. So why are obituaries so vital to the community? So obviously in the last year and a half, we've experienced, and the whole industry have kind of experienced, I would say, a revitalization of obituaries. The difference between Modulist and some other sites or ordering platform systems is that we don't keep any content from the reader or news sites. We're just kind of a processing system. So the content goes from our site to whatever site that they've chosen to place on. So obituaries, besides it's being a great tool for the families to grieve, it creates a historical record. For example, Inforum.com is now doing a series called The Vault, a news product about feature obits kind of thing, that to increase their loyal readers and convince them to subscribe because it's on a subscription model. And then, so that's kind of some evidence from a publisher that we work with, but a publisher that we don't work with, this is just an example. There's a great article online that was just published of June of this year with Kristen Hare, the editor of Pointer. She started a study for 2.5 years to experiment with the Tampa Bay Times, so in Florida, to test out some things about obituaries. And what she's found is that people will read or feature obituaries in the digital format. Those stories can drive loyalty through digital subscriptions or membership, and they can help us remember what we have in common. All right, so next slide, please. Another reason that we've found for obituaries, irregardless of the community it serves, is that they will maintain consistent digital traffic. And then if you just want to click through, here are some stats for that. Again, Inform and North Dakota's largest news sites, the obituary section ranks in the top 10 daily, has an average engaged time that ranks higher than the average engaged time of the site, and then maintains consistent page views, which is approximately 42,000. And then approximately the page views are 23,000. The current subscription that Inform has is 42,000. If you want to click through the second set. And then, like I said, it already acts as a discovery pathway for new readers. For smaller news sites like the Detroit Lakes Tribune, which is, it's a weekly printed, but we're all dailies now, right? The Detroit Lakes Tribune is more of it's a lake community, so more of a destination kind of lifestyle thing, but it does do news as well. Their obituary section still ranks in the top 10 daily, has an average engaged time 40 seconds, while the overall site's average is just 18 seconds, and then made consistent page views despite that they have a fluctuating digital subscriber base, because it's kind of a seasonal community. A lot of people move out there for the summer, and so they may re-up their subscription, and then they move back to their city residence, which usually is around Fargo, which is where inform.com is serves. So if you want to go to the next site, and then acts as a discovery pathway as well. We've also found that that during high times, like it has been in the last year, that it does have a long engagement time. For example, this was during April 2020, Inform's obituary section gained more than a minute of average engaged time, despite their overall site just being 18 seconds. So again, it's just a really powerful statistic that we found in the last year. So if you want to go to the next site. So I went to look at like why this is happening, and I specifically looked at obituaries, but I'm in the process of looking at why it works for the business briefs too. For obituaries, readers include accurate information because obviously it's incentivized for them to do so. So for example, if you just want to keep clicking through, Devin, they include the deceased name, age, city of residence, name of funeral home hosting memorial services, address to a specific publication, and the website URL. These are all required fields in Modulist too as well, so that kind of helps to prompt them. So why does including, if we want to click to the next slide too, Devin, that would be great. So why is including this information help to drive digital traffic? Because it does help any site to meet any search engine's requirements. And so any search engine, particularly Google, is the most prominent one, measures on these things. So number one, the relevance, whether the story is relevant to the user's query. So when a person types in. Number two, the interest the reader defined based on their previous search or clicks. Number three, location, the factor accounts for surfacing local news related to where the reader lives. So obviously when city of residence is required, this improves the overall site's SEO. I'm going to click again. Number 4, prominence. Articles that cover a key topic that is currently trending will have more chances to be serviced. Number 5, authoritativeness. Search raters heavily influence the signals Google manages when assigning trustworthiness and authoritative to news sites. So any of your guys' sites, I'm sure, have that as a factor. If you want to just keep clicking through. Number 5, freshness. So how often the site's been updated. So if you use anything and any type of ordering platform, you just want to make sure that's updated regularly. We use sometimes with our system, we use a RSS feed into whatever the CMS system, but that of course depends on your CMS system. And then lastly, any search engine will base a website based on this usability. So how fast the site loads, how well the site is named, and correct tagging, which again can help with the required inputs that Modulist requires, or any other ordering system that you use. All right, so if you want to click through. So this, again, it's just what we recommend, but what we've gained in the last 5 years. So number 1, we very much highly recommend that you create partnerships with local businesses for business briefs or funeral directors. We have an onboarding system for funeral directors so that they can feel supported with using the system, including in demos, educational content. We also have a newsletter for them. We also highly recommend that customer service standards are high and consistent. Devlin and I both being back from background in news, we understand that resources can be tight. So if you can offload that with someone who has the space and time to help a person when they are experiencing problems. Number 3, Devlin already touched on this, set a consistent pricing strategy, and then have that consistency being the ordering and the placement options as well. Include discounts for multiple publications. We found that it's increased revenue overall. And we always recommend to offer additional help and how-to resources for readers. We have those in place, but you can also do that with request anything new to create. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Devlin again.
All right. So over the years, one of the things that we have discovered, and it was, I will fully disclose here, it was an unintentional discovery of a great significance. Because of the system was so easy, and because consumers can price themselves either up lower or higher because there's real-time pricing in the system, what we found over time is that consumers started charging themselves more than previous when our clients were working directly with the funeral home. They would get a real live cost here, and then it would go back to the funeral home, and it would seem like sticker shock to the families, and so they would reduce the size of the obit. Well, here they're in the driver's seat, and so as they're building their obit or their paid business announcement or their wedding engagement, they're seeing the cost of it in real time, and so they get to make those decisions about what they're going to charge themselves. And much like with Amazon, right, they develop that very insidious tool that sits down below your ordering box, and it says consumers that have purchased this also have done this, right? Well, we put some tools into Modulist so that as people click on a publication, we offer them other publications in the region and say, public You'll notice some of our clients there in the upper Midwest, clients that decided to publish an obit in Grand Forks also have published them in Fargo. And we're actually starting to see an uptick over the last couple of years of 6 to 7% increase in sales for some of our clients, just because they're getting orders to appear in multiple publications. So April has put together this slide for Forum Communications Company that's headquartered in the upper Midwest. And during the last fiscal year, Forum Communication increased its community content submissions by 11% and obituary revenue by almost $1 million, with its revenue now topping out at $5 million a year for their publications that they have in Modulist. And a lot of that is directly attributed to the fact that we have an easy to use consumer experience, and we keep inviting them into ways to increase the size of their orders or to include multiple photos. And so we call it very cleverly our Amazon effect, right? So, next slide. And you can kind of just keep clicking through for the information here. So you'll notice on this pie chart that almost every one of those segments is equal in size. The great thing about paid content from the community is that it's very consistent in the sense from month to month how many orders you're going to receive, how many death notice obituaries you're going to receive. And so this is pulled directly from our system, and you can start to see that while there are a few months where the numbers start to decline a bit, this is consistent revenue from month to month that is not going to swing wildly depending on the business's economic realities. And so this is really important content that brings revenue in a stable manner. Next slide, please. I think this slide is really telling. So you'll notice this covers a time during the pandemic, right? So from 19 to 20, you'll notice if you follow that blue line, this is the total number of submissions that came through Modulist during that year's period. You'll notice that in December of 19, we were at a high point where we were receiving 3,000 plus orders a month. And then you start to see the line start to slide down, the blue line. Why was that? Well, that's when the pandemic hit, right? And a number of our clients started to shed the number of days that they published during a week. And a large number of them either went down to twice a week or once a week, where they had printed edition, and then they implemented other things like e-editions and made more emphasis on their websites, etc. But interestingly enough, even if you follow that blue line down to where we were in September of 2020, the order numbers went down, but the revenue stayed the same. And so even though the number of publications per week decreased, consumers still wanted those obits and those weddings and those milestones into their community newspaper. And so even though we're processing fewer orders, revenue has stayed the same. And again, I just include this slide because it's a healthy reminder that this is stable content that delivers stable revenue throughout your fiscal year. Next slide. So at the bottom end of, I get the really luxurious position of being able to say that I was able to found a company with other people who love newspapers, and the fact that it sounds a little altruistic, but we're here because Modulist wants to help newspapers thrive. We believe in community newspapers. We've all worked in community newspapers, and so this is not only a job for us, but it's a passion. And so we specialize in the processing of user-generated paid content, helping media publish life stories about people in their community. And it's really a passion of ours. It's not just a job. Next slide. Just a little bit more specifically about Modulist, we've told you that we've been in existence about 5 years. So we are averaging about 3,500 paid content orders a month. Now that's not just obits, of course, that's across all of our paid content verticals. So those could be pet milestones, those could be a classified, those could be an obit, etc. You'll see the states that we have partner newspapers in at this point. And we continue to grow. We have an onboarding system where we onboard a few newspapers at a time, just so that we don't overwhelm our staff, and so that we spend a lot of time ironing out the details before we ever go live with our partner publications, because we want to make sure that from day one, when you tell your community that you're partnering with us, that we have all of the systems in place. One more slide. So Jim O'Rourke, some of you may know him. O'Rourke has started a media company about 3 years ago, and he has quite rapidly expanded himself across the entire US, but he's got publications in a number of the states in which we operate already. And so what I found really cool is that Jim again wrote this in as a testimonial, because he really appreciates what we're doing for his company. Jim has a business model, of course, where he is in markets that aren't very big, right? Every one of his publications, except for one, I think, are weeklies, and he has a very defined market that he walks into when he purchases it. And so what he looks to us to do is be his partner from a staffing standpoint. Jim looks to us to be an unpaid extension of his staff. And of course, his quote was, "Modulist provides excellent service to funeral homes and direct to consumers. The service is efficient, and we've taken this work from our frontline folks in editorial." We're really proud of the fact that we've been able to allow Jim and his company to take that time that newsrooms used to spend processing this content. Now they can go out and tell other stories. And then finally, one more slide. I include this one from the standpoint that we know we've been in this business a long time. Even before Modulist existed as a company on its own, we were in the business of processing paid content. And so all of us with our newspaper backgrounds understand how important that relationship between you and your local funeral homes is. And so we strive to provide the same level of service that you and your staff does now. We're really proud that Brett gave us this testimonial. It helps us enter obituaries for several publications at once. It makes our job a lot easier. That's a pretty good sell when you walk into your local funeral home. April, I'm going to toss it back to you for any closing comments that you have.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to invite anyone, if they have additional questions, either about the revenue process or the process of Modulist in general, or I can talk more about the digital stuff. Obviously, we found mostly with, like I said, the obituaries or business briefs, the most important thing, even if you don't onboard a system like Modulist, is that you just get consistent with the pricing strategy, the content types, and then with the process to get it online. So that's, with us here, we've learned that the CMS system needs to have correct tagging, correct sectioning, everything like that. So you can measure what's going to work for your readers, and setting up that consistent pricing strategy and offering them options as far as cross-publishing is the way that you'll be able to serve them more, and then also serve your newsroom more to make more money for the whole publication.
Thank you, April. As April mentioned, just if you guys have a question, please feel free to open up your mic at this point, and April and/or Devin will be happy to answer them.
I have a observation and then possibly a new business for you to get into, but we've had a great deal of success actually retaining writers to compose obituaries that tell a story, a personal story, a lot of anecdotes, things that ordinarily aren't mentioned in the newspaper. And we upcharge those for $250. And it's really a very easy sale, because as we know, funeral directors aren't editorialists by any means for the most part. And if you had the capability to have a stable of writers who could produce an interesting story about these folks, I think that we would certainly see that. It's cumbersome on our side because of the time that's involved between the death notice and the obituary. But if there were a stable of writers that you folks could avail yourselves that would specialize in that, I think that would be something that we definitely would reach out to you and hold on for dear life.
Kevin,
Obits, see, did you get that? Obits and dear life. I was trying to weave that around.
No.
Kevin, it's interesting you say that. We actually in the very so one of our very first employees, he left shortly after we launched 5 years ago. He actually started a side business on his own of doing concierge obits. And in the beginning, we talked with him about down the road how we would incorporate that. And so it's actually one of the things in the roadmap of what we're trying to figure out now, right, is what is the consumer experience and how do we, at what point in the ordering process do we integrate that? So I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think it affirms what we thought of 5 years ago, that this is an important service for newspapers.
Absolutely.
Thank you for mentioning it.
Yeah, I know that's still in our roadmap or still in development process. Actually, right now, something that we've decided to develop for the near future is that we want to offer like a special section so people could check if they want their obituaries to be featured in an annual special section of the newspaper. So that would be like a notable person from the community dying. And then that would be just a simple check mark that a user could click on the box. And then that would allow editorial folks or us to go back to that user submitter and talk to them more in depth to get more of a feature obit kind of thing. So just trying to prepare for that eventual feature, hopefully.
Thank you, April. Any additional questions? I don't see Ferris on the line, but I do have a question, because him and I were talking a little bit about this whole self-service model, Devlin and April, and maybe you guys could, talk a little bit about some success stories from the folks that you're working with that were able to, take the small business category and, free up some sales time, folks going to the self-serve model, placing the small business ad, and then giving the local rep additional time to go after, a larger fish or a larger fish. Could you speak a little bit to that and how that's working?
Yeah. So in some ways, I'll use there's a couple of papers out of South Dakota that are sister daily with a weekly. So they came through the pandemic, and their sales staff was about a third of what it used to be, right? And so, all of a sudden, everybody's sales lists go from maybe possibly manageable before the pandemic to unmanageable at this point, right? How do you cover for losing 2/3 of your sales staff? And so, what they're really focusing on doing is putting together a public awareness program that their partnership with Modulist exists. So if you are that hairstylist that is just bought in and you're renting a stall in somebody else's salon, they can come on to Modulist, put it in a business announcement announcing their grand opening, And, you know, maybe so for something manageable or $50 or $75, put a headshot in there with a headline and, you know, 200 words about opening. Well, now you haven't had a salesperson that had to go out and sell that and come back and develop a proof and bring it back to that, you know, all for $200 or $75 or $50, right? So it's a price point for so many more small businesses. And one of the things that we are moving into, and Jim, you and I have talked about this before, the next phase for us is working with a community newspaper and then partnering with the Chamber of Commerce, right? Going in and sitting down as a community newspaper and a partner with the Chamber of Commerce and saying, let's do a small business roundtable for all of your members, let them know about the Modulist platform, and then, you know, in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, right? Because we all are trying to do the same thing. We are trying to elevate the opportunities that our small businesses have, and some of them just don't have marketing budgets, right? They don't have the hundreds or $1,000 that other businesses, but they might have $50, they might have $100. And one of the things that we could do with the local publication is maybe we put together some kind of package where if you buy one, get one free, right? You know, because you're getting something that you weren't getting anything from before. So, I don't know. Does that help, Jim?
Yeah, that does. And I love that idea of partnering, right? Because it's all about today partnerships and partnering with the chamber. They have new members that are coming on. They're trying to create value for their new members. Why not offer them a small business ad or 3 business ads, right? Because we really don't want to sell a one-off, but more like a campaign. And then they at least test drive your product. They're getting exposure in your publications. And then it becomes an upsell opportunity for the newspaper to go back out after those folks. So love the idea of a partnership with a chamber. Yeah.
I was going to tell you, Jim, along that, when you start talking partnerships, so one of the other creative things that we've done is working with a community publication. So, you know, we mentioned earlier that we have an entire category that's, you know, a vertical dedicated to pets, right? There was a publication that came to us several years ago and said, we have people that want to publish pet obits, right? So we not only do we have the pet obits, but what we have is pet milestones, and you know, a lot of the same things that we run milestones for humans, right? That, you know, their puppy just graduated from, you know, training class, or they adopted a new dog, right? So what we have done is working with rescue organizations. The local newspaper partners with the rescue organization, and when a family adopts a dog, for $25, they can get that into the local paper. The rescue operation keeps $5, the newspaper keeps 20, and the newspaper gets content. The rescue gets awareness and a $5 kickback, and it's all about creating that partnership.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, it also creates kind of at least from the editorial side, it's been a way for reporters or editors to kind of say no to, like, they get pitches all the time, obviously, to talk about the business latest achievement or a nonprofits event or a small businesses event. And obviously, as reporters and editors or website managers, we're all stretched thin. So it's a way to give them an option to tell their story and allow the people who are real storytellers to focus on like the bigger issues, kind of.
Love it. Love it. Okay, I know Bill Barker would take the first pet ad out. For these.
Yeah, I'm on my way.
All right. Hey, gang, we are 5 minutes before this closes. Just wanted to throw it out there for any more questions for April or Devlin. Going once. Going twice, going 3 times. All right, gang, just a special thank you again to April and Devlin from Modulist for joining us. Hope you found value in our session. We always look forward to hearing feedback from our members, so please send any suggestions for future VIP roundtables our way. We look forward to seeing you again in October at our next VIP roundtable discussion with our new partners from Column discussing their public notice enterprise product for members. and our newly designed floridapublicnotice.com site and our new dashboards. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great rest of the day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, thanks.